Wait, 7 o'clock, and looks like we have a quorum. I know Derek said he's gonna be a little late. Nate's here, running some prints. As anybody have an update on Michelle, or who else are we missing? Is that just Michelle? And then I don't, it's fine if she's not here. I just didn't know. So, okay. Well, we'll again call it to order. The first thing is review agenda and add additions or deletions. Is there anything we need to talk about or move around? It's a pretty straightforward agenda. Not a lot happening. I mean, there's a lot happening, it's just not many things happening. No, we're good. Okay. And then approve the minutes. Does somebody take a motion, or somebody want to address the findings we've already talked about? Whoever. Here comes Derek too.
There are two changes to the minutes. One is to add Jared Isaacson's name to committee members in attendance. And the other is to change on the minutes approved on February 5th, that it was Jared Isaacson that moved rather than Philip Van Cleve. So there's two edits to the minutes. Are there any other edits that we're not aware of? Okay.
I move to approve these minutes with those changes.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion items around this? If not, if everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think everybody said aye, right? Okay, so it's unanimous. The next, we'll hop right into our first agenda item, which is review of the community report. For those, anybody following along online and or follow or review this meeting later on, we did have a chance to look at this draft from the subcommittee. They provided it to us about 2-3 days ago. We had a chance to review and also provide any general feedback. So you may hear reference to that if you're following along on this video. We will get a revised version that we will present to the board once our final discussions are over tonight, because I'm sure there may be other stuff we talk about tonight that will be addressed or need to be addressed in a more finalized version. So with this, I'll just open up the floor to anybody that wants to bring up any other thoughts, discussion items, things to point out, etc.
I just want to say thank you. This is thorough. I think it does a really excellent job of covering any and all questions that people could have in a succinct way. I very much enjoy the calendar of events and the way that it's laid out. It makes it very easy to follow. I think if there was one thing that I would I think could be helpful is essentially like in the preamble, or maybe a section very similar to it, just like almost a too long didn't read section for people who might just approach it, a executive summary of what follows, if not more than just a quick overview of each of the sections, just because I think that this is so excellent as far as making sure that it's so clear. I just worry that there is going to be a large section of people who might just not actually read it.
So we do have a member that has suggested something that would kind
Perfect.
of address
Yeah.
it.
I apologize if I missed that in the.
No, that's okay. I had emailed Claire a little bit earlier about it, and I think that section with all the timeline section should be moved to the back, and then all the narration come first, because I agree with you. I think that, I mean, it's great, and it gives a nice timeline, and it really shows when the board actually got a heads up, hey, something's going on. And I think that's important, but I think that there's a lot of people who are not geeks like us, or I am anyway, and I would read that timeline, but some people I think are going to get overwhelmed by it. So the narration, I thought the narrative should come first and move the timeline to the end of the report.
I like that. So basically make it like an appendix essentially. And then should we have maybe the top, you're saying kind of executive, summary, but like maybe should, if nothing else, maybe just, I guess I'm drawing a blank on the right name for this, but like almost like a little directory, like say, hey, we have the preamble, then, bullet points of what sections are in here and what pages are on.
Yeah, so today I went through and organized it with headings. So like when it does get exported to a PDF, it would do that. I think what you're mentioning is taking the timeline of events and swapping it with what happened in 23, 24. So if we basically swap those, because Claire put like a ton of detail into that section, but I think what people are really looking for potentially is to read, okay, well, what happened first, and then you can basically go through the timeline, which again, super detailed. And thank you again, Claire, for all your work on this.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at how that would look, I think that it changes it from feeling like, oh man, it's 9 pages to, okay, this is 3 pages with great detail at the end. I think that is a wonderful suggestion. I don't even, yet after seeing it that way, I don't think that there's even much more condensing that needs to happen in a section.
The other thing that I noted, because I wasn't sure when I was going to be here, I did make some suggestions in terms of using maybe potentially more neutral language. So for example, instead of specifically using like mistakes or errors, just calling out a little bit more neutral language associated with saying that, for example, financial management issues occurred, or financial planning discrepancies in financial planning. So there were a handful of areas where I thought we were using language that, I just want to make sure that we're as neutral as possible on this report. And if there's places where we can use more nondescript neutral language in the document itself, I think people will be less concerned with the loaded potential of some of these words and spend more time focusing on the details associated with it. So in the example that, or in the document that we just read, you'll see some strikeouts in there. The text preceded by that would be those suggestions that I made. And then the other item that I made was I just wanted to make sure on the next steps to ensure financial stability, we just added basically a final line, making sure that to communicate again to the public that this work has been done, but Nate's work continues to make these processes better and better as he's joined the organization and bringing his insight. So just making sure that the district will continue to build upon these foundations by implementing systemic improvements in financial management practice to ensure long-term fiscal stability and sustainability. Gail and her team has done an amazing job thus far to get us where we're at, but I think we probably still have some areas for improvement that Nate's going to continue to make. And I just wanted to make sure to include that in the document as well as kind of a final close to it.
So I appreciate what you're saying, Derek. As the person who wrote the first 2 paragraphs, the preamble part there, the audit did show that there were mistakes. And so that's why I use that terminology, but I agree. I think it's fine. We don't want anybody to getting focused or sidetracked on any particular language that might be a hot button for anybody. So making it's vaguer. It's more vague to say financial management issues that occurred. It's a little wordier. I was always taught to get rid of your prepositional phrase and put in your one word if you can use it, make it work. But I certainly would step aside for what you're saying.
And again, really part of the reason in doing so, obviously, this document, I think a big part of this is making sure that we move forward. And I suspect there are potentially some community members who will focus on specific words within these documents. So I think in terms of, again, trying to be as neutral in terms of our vernacular, I think make sure that the reader can deduce from themselves what happened.
So then I just had one other thing that I saw, which was when they were talking about the controls for contracts.
Like what page approximately? what
It's
paragraph?
on page 8 and it's the next to the last paragraph. So, and it says, there are, beginning in 2024-25, additional controls have been added for contracts. There are 2 signers for every contract and staff will encumber all larger. Do we really want larger in their contracts? Don't they encumber all contracts? Yeah, so let's take larger out of there.
I think what they're trying to say is instead of like incrementally trying to track it, they're saying if the contract is between 50,000 and 100,000, we're gonna encumber 100,000 right away.
Right, not.
Instead of doing, oh, it's only 25 now and 25 later and 25, Q4 or whatever, right? There's, I think the message, I think we should keep the message in there. I think maybe, yes, rewording or clarifying that a little bit in a different language might be better for that sentence.
It's just taking. She just wants to take the larger,
So that
word
it's-
larger out because the district has a practice of encumbering all contracts,
Yeah.
not just the larger contracts.
Okay, I guess I even read it wrong the first time. There we go. Okay.
Because again, I think that was one of our controls that the
Yes.
new staff had taken on, which is if we're signing a contract and we know we're going to spend those dollars, then we should encumber them. So, yeah, I think just
Yeah, I'm good with that.
yeah, all contracts I think is definitely descriptive enough for
Yep.
that. And the only other suggestion I had was there was some non-specific language about when Nate started. So I believe it was February, Nate, that you started.
Yeah.
So I just went ahead and suggested a replacement. Just in case someone was reading this after March, that if they go back to reference the document, even though the published date would be in March, just to again try to make it a tad bit more clear.
So are there any other areas that people want to suggest changes on this document?
On this copy, Paula's last name is spelled incorrectly. Paula's last name is spelled.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
sorry.
notice that. You have it as Rasich with a C, it's a D.
yeah.
Yeah, I know how to spell it. I just probably
So,
I
it was-
messed it up. So, yeah, thank
She
you.
has to spell it that way now. So
Yeah.
you said it. So
I'll fix it.
someone might want to let
Typo.
her know.
Thank you, Nate.
Well, I just have a question. What is our plan for distribution of this or how to, I mean, obviously we're just giving this to the board and the board has to decide how to make it available to the public, if at all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I believe it's gonna be on our agenda for next week's meeting to talk about, kind of do a handoff to them. I don't know yet.
So
if we-
it'll be posted then as a part of that meeting as meeting materials.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that makes it available. to
That
the
makes it public,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think the other side of that message, I think what you're asking is I do know that Dave is wanting to use this in some of those community discussions. They've already started, but as they keep going through different versions and rounds of it, they want to use this and some of this information to share with the community as part of their feedback that they're trying to get. So.
I would assume to some degree there'll be, I don't know if a vote necessarily, but an agreement by the whole board to adopt this is, our position.
Well, it is also a very nice historical document that outlines for anybody in the future to look back at and say, these are the kind of mistakes that were made or financial issues. and let's not do it again.
and how to handle it. And
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I have a question, outside of this, but it's just, since we've called it out in this document, and this is gonna be pointed to you, Nate, and now that you're kind of going through onboarding and all this other stuff. How, like, can you explain to us and maybe the public who's listening, like, where do you find the procedures? I'm sure there's been new procedures built, there's been procedures updated. Is there Google Docs, or is there like a library sitting somewhere on a shelf somewhere that has like procedures drafted and approved?
It's a good question. This is actually something I was talking about today. So, one of the things what I call it internal controls. When I started many years ago, that was my foray into finance, which was writing internal controls, and it's essentially like workflow or a decision matrix or a flow chart, whatever you want to call it, of every procedure. And over the years, I haven't been able to find an updated one since I left in 14. And so I've started there, and we're starting to document the processes that are in place in all of our areas and how things process, from hires to payments for personal services contracts or coaches or ASB funds, things like that. So what we're doing is we're kind of going back in time to move forward. Our auditors do something called walkthroughs, where they've identified the procedures that they view. And so we're going to integrate those responses into what is happening and also what we want to happen. And so there's a lot of creation going on right now in our office. And so that's it's documentation is how we're getting there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that at least we're moving forward with it. I'm sure a lot of this is we were playing like my weird sports analogy, playing like a pickup basketball game, and like you don't have everything, the coach doesn't know what they're doing, you not necessarily have documented plays, they're just going at it to tackle it and try to win the game. And but I'm glad at least we're taking a step back now, looking at all that, and now actually tracking it and documenting it, so we do have that going forward. Is there anything you need personally from you? I think this might be the last meeting for the finance committee for a while. Was there anything you need from like us or budget committee or board at all to help or assist you at all?
Nothing that I could think of. I mean, I think if this committee continues in the future, as you guys suggested, I think co-creating agendas and making sure the purpose is strong and intentional, I think would be the most help. That way it's just as, beneficial. I want to make sure it's beneficial for the people on the committee and the district. So even though it's extra work, no, just kidding.
That sounds good. I agree.
Okay, so I have captured the suggested changes, and so what I'm wondering is if we want to entertain a motion on approving the report as amended by our earlier discussion, so then I know what to do to finalize it, and then I would forward that on to our two board member representatives for you to share with the board.
Sounds good to me.
So I'll move that we adopt the Finance Advisory Committee report with amended changes suggested by the committee.
Second.
Yeah. Any other questions or discussions on this?
I just wanted to respond to your question about how do you know what to do? And it's a word that I always hate to use, but that I find myself using: norms. So as you work in the business area in schools, you learn the norms of how to do things, how to make sure that you're capturing everything and what are you supposed to watch out for. But I don't know that there's a formal process, and yours is great, writing manuals. It's always, having a manual for each job or a guidance for each job. So when staff turns over, people still know, what do you need to do at this time of the year, those things are really important. I know in California, CASBO, which here is OASBO, used to do workshops, and those were really informative. they had a big ones, annual conferences where you could go and you would learn a ton from other school districts, how they're doing things. And that was also a learning tool. Does OASBO do annual conferences? And he should go.
So
Yeah.
Director of Finance Nate Rodell is very modest. He's a former president of OASBO.
Okay.
Oh, oh, we have royalty in the
Yeah.
president.
Just on your point, though, I think the importance of having norms and solidifying them is codifying them to some degree. So if there is a change in leadership, a change in personnel, that those processes are there and unable to be glossed over without making those changes intentionally to processes.
100% agree on all those. Any other discussion items or comments? Okay, then I'll call for a vote. Oh, did you? I was gonna say a call. I'm going to call for a vote. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. So we're yeah,
Now I'd like to make a comment.
yeah. You can make a comment now.
I just want to give kudos to Claire for all the hard work that she did in making this document work.
Yes.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you to everyone else who participated in that. It's really, really wonderful. I was so happy with how that came out. It was beyond what I could have expected. So thank you.
I thought it was a great document, and it's kind of sometimes tough to sit up here and while people pick apart your first draft. So I thought it was very good.
It was wonderful. And I was expecting maybe 2 pages, and 9 pages is great, and it's still readable and digestible. So it's awesome.
There was too much that happened in the past year for it to be 2 pages.
Okay, so we're done with the item 1. Then state school fund estimate, update or changes. Nate, I know I have Galen as that section process or as the co-presenters and some of this, but that's you, Nate, now,
That's
right?
me, yeah.
So,
She messaged me this morning and asked if she needed to be there, and I said, it's okay. I got a wig at home. I'll sit in a low chair and wear my readers and I'll fill the role. She said she needed a laugh, so that was good. So yeah, so I wanted just to clarify, just the report that you had from at the board meeting, or just the revised 21 that we got on the 21st?
okay,
Or
so
what was the intent of that?
right, so the intent of this topic was, I thought from last finance meeting a month ago, well, even prior to that, we were gonna expect a change to the state school funding.
Mhm.
Like what we were gonna submit to them to say, this is an update because our taxes came in.
Yep.
And we needed to maybe adjust the values.
Okay.
And what did we submit to them? And then I think last finance meeting, Gail mentioned, or maybe it was even Claire, like, the timing, sometimes we get updates before then, but usually we don't have everything ironed out or won't even have some of the details before May, before we have to, start working with this. Well, no, we start working on the budget before the state, provides their end of year budget, or whatever. But bottom line, back to this specific topic is more or less, again, is there an adjustment? Did we actually physically submit something to the state already? Right,
So,
that's what.
so the real question is, have we looked at our December 31 property tax collections for year to date and compared that to the estimate that's turned into ODE, a year ago? And have we updated that to true numbers, both in our ADMW, our average daily membership weighted, and in our property tax local revenue collected, to make sure that we don't have a big adjustment in the following year?
Right.
Thank
So-
you for.
And the reason why we wanted that was because of the past history of the inaccuracy of the estimate, which led to
Paying money.
fewer dollars coming in, during the time that one would expect it to be, and then having to have it adjusted later.
Yeah, no surprises. Yes, so the financial report that I gave at the board meeting last time incorporated those changes. So the increases in property taxes that were received. The ADM that we're going to have in this next year is going to be the hold harmless from the current year. So that one's I mean, it's down from where it was. And so we're in the count from the year prior. It looks like it's probably going to continue to drop, and we're going to be, until we start having more kinders or move-ins, we're going to be on that decline. And so that's in there. And then the other updates that were in the revised estimate that came out there at the end of January included anticipated change. Sorry, I lost the word. The May adjustment is included in there. And then we're working on right now submission for high cost disability and excess costs, which are in additional payments that they put in the end. Those are due on the 15th. So those are kind of the changes that are in there. And which wraps into the third one, appropriation changes. I also showed how I included the report that we gave to the board in your guys' packet there too. Just that we are out of appropriation level, projected to be overspent on appropriations and budget. And so we're going to have a supplemental come to the board probably in April. It's going to increase budget as well as adjust appropriations based on anticipated expenditures. So.
Okay. And so part of this, go ahead.
I have one
Yeah.
clarifying question.
Yeah.
So you say it's in the January financial report. Great. The
This update,
updates
yep.
in the state school fund elements. The question is, has that updated information been given to the state so that your new estimates that are coming out will reflect the changes, the
Yeah,
updates? on
so
that?
those updates were submitted by Galen in December. And that was reflected in the updated one we got in January. Sorry if I stumbled over that part.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay.
So, okay, getting back to the state school fund. So you said this is the same packet you provided us to the board. That's great.
Yep.
So then if I'm looking at, is this the proper sheet here? The 24-25?
The appropriations?
Well, no, for the state school fund one.
Oh, did I put the state school fund in there?
Well, there is a copy of it in here.
Oh, I did. No, this one right here would be.
Okay, so this is the one we're talking about. So our initial estimate in March 24
Which one?
was 23.5 million. Then June 2024 was down to 20.64 million. And then now we bumped it up a little bit because of our taxes that come in. We're thinking 21.4 is our estimated taxes.
Right.
It says FY, it's got a dark banner
25.
on top, and it's got FY 24-25 SSF estimate.
That's the right one. Okay. I thought I had attached the actual updated state school fund
It is on the next.
page.
Yeah, it's on the next page.
Oh,
It is
it's on
on
the
the
next page?
Yeah.
Well, then,
And that just came out on the 21st. But so yeah, those are the numbers that were included in the update. The one thing that I need to call and have Jared fix at the state is the county school fund. That's actually the prior year collections. And that's supposed to be 17,500, and that 275,000 in the upper left-hand corner is supposed to be up in the property taxes total. But those are the numbers that are included in that estimate there.
So I'm just looking back on the sheet before that, where it has the estimates over the time periods.
Yep.
What is G estimate?
I think that's Gay Yellen.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that estimate on 11/13 trued up essentially with what we got 12/31 as far as
Yeah.
those
She
property tax numbers.
may not have updated the date on that.
Okay.
Is that is not the number that was on the estimate in June. I don't have that here. I'm sorry.
yes. So I guess part of this finance committee is just not having great minds come together, but is me and Saul not, or as representatives of the board, we haven't done finance before, at least I know I haven't personally, and not this detail. And so this is an education for me and Saul, but also anybody listening out there. So it sounds like that was an estimate done in November. We submitted something then. Is there gonna be
December.
another or like an update to the school fund before May or?
Yeah, so if I'm really nice and good to the state, they usually let you make a couple adjustments up
Okay.
until the next, and we're really waiting for our May reconciliation is what we're looking forward
Okay.
to. I think the high cost disability and excess costs are things that we want to we get done and get that information. So I have it on my calendar to call Jared at the state to see, because I'm honestly a little bit rusty on these things. And so I need to hear, I like to have a voice kind of talk me through changes too.
Okay.
And so a lot of what I'm doing right now is refresher stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so there might be some minor adjustments that we're going to make up into the estimate for the May adjustment. And then generally when the May adjustment is published, that's it.
That's pretty much
That's
the
the
final
one.
number at that moment until the next year's final.
Yeah, and then there'll be a reconciliation for the prior year
Yeah.
in the next year. So,
Okay.
yeah. Did I answer the educating piece you wanted?
You answered my direct question, but yeah, it's just sometimes when we discuss this, if we can do a little bit more in this meetings would be nice. I know this is a learning thing for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
More of an education part of it too, so we can have more of an open discussion. The board is more of a percentage, you know, numbers, and like we'll have questions, we might not, but here is more about like where we can deep dive a little bit deeper into this
Yeah.
and understand maybe some of the I can't even say that word.
Intricacies.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. And one of the
process and how things work. So,
and this time of year is always interesting because we're working on budget for next year. And we're in a legislative year. We're working on making sure we know what's happening in the current year, but we're also wondering what the final outcome was for the previous year. And so we're really working in 3 years at the same time. There's another program like that called E-Rate, which is, we're not gonna talk about that, but that one's woof. But yeah, and so I think that's part of why I think I'm not sure about that date that Galen has at the top, because I'm pretty sure she updated this in December. And that's why that one, we just need to update that date at the top.
So we know you're going to confer with her so that
Oh,
we
yeah.
know everything is great. Thank you.
We're texting buddies. So
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the estimates. It shows us $21.4 million for property taxes, but on the grant document, it shows us $21.45 million. Is that effectively just a small change that was provided to the state, and then they're reflecting back what was provided to them for the property?
there's more detail underneath that number at the top. Are you looking at this one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy here.
So that number actually should be higher because this is a total of three or four different lines for current year taxes, past year taxes, interest on taxes, penalties on taxes. Anyways, those all should be rolled up into that.
Okay.
So, but it looks like it got broken out for some reason. And the prior year 275 is in the county school fund, which shouldn't be there. Doesn't change the bottom line,
Oh, okay.
but it's not in the right category.
So just as I'm comparing these two documents, would I expect the local revenue to match what should be on this document here? So for example, I show a sum of local revenue at $22.3 million.
There's also been a change since this in the common school fund, which
Okay.
would change it. So you can see the budget.
Yep.
An estimate is 545. We got our first common school fund payment in January of 302. So that we're gonna get two of those. So that's gonna be up on that. So there's a lot of little adjustments.
Okay.
So as soon as we put out an estimate, it's wrong, just so you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I get that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like, would it be advisable to potentially compare these documents off each other? But it sounds like, upon receiving the school fund, and it doesn't look like maybe we've made another estimate since 11/13/24. I don't know what the 5-25 is. I'm guessing that may be a May, like a placeholder for May.
Yep.
But okay, so then we already know that the common school fund, we had budgeted for 545, but we're effectively getting 604 because based upon that first payment
Yeah.
received in
Yeah.
January. Okay.
So it changes.
okay, yeah. Any other questions from anybody else around state school fund updates or estimates?
Do you think it'd be possible to have this month not monthly, but as it's been updated, an updated form of this for the next board meeting?
It's on the agenda. I'm not sure if it's on the next board meeting agenda or the one following. So there's monthly financial reports to the board.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that will be updated.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you. And then, again, so we'll move to the next one unless anybody else has any other questions or comments. So you briefly touched about the appropriation. So I just want to make sure we understand as a committee, and again, any public that's listening out there, what we're looking at, and then what's, as far, I think we've already had to do one last year. Maybe, I can't remember. Maybe we didn't, where the board has to approve appropriation changes.
Yes, you did at the end of the year.
Okay, that's what. So I just want to kind of just make sure we walk through that again, and what was maybe the cause of this one that you're going to be needing to ask us to do for this time. Can't find the right page. Like if you have it,
Next one.
there it is, second page.
Second page. So appropriations. So part of what the budget committee does and is that they establish appropriations, which is the spending authority that a district has. In education, appropriations are broken down by something we call function or appropriation level, which is 1,000s, which is instruction, 2,000s, which is support, 3,000s is community service, 4,000s is capital, 5,000s is transfer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the budget committee and board establish those levels. And a budget is an estimate and a plan for how we anticipate spending that money. But sometimes the plan changes or costs come in higher or lower. And it may be that part of more of the budget goes to support because we weren't able to hire enough teachers, or we have an excessive number of leaves that happen in the instruction level, and ends up that we spend more in support because we have education assistants going into support or something like that. Who knows, right? Lots of things happen. But when it gets out of whack, then we pay attention to that, and we do a supplemental just to say we spent more in the 1,000s or less, but we stay within the budget where we can. In this last iteration of the budget, I call it the hack and whack, but it was a lot of work done to reduce the budget, and a lot of things have unintended consequences, or things don't end up as we think. And so what's happened is we're spending a little bit more. And so that's one piece. And then also we have spending in certain appropriation levels that are projected to be over what the dollar figure is in that line as well. So when we come back in probably April, we'll have an appropriation adjustment, which will increase the budget as well as readjust where some of the budget is on those appropriation levels.
Is there enough revenue to offset? Is there additional revenue that's offsetting the additional expenditures?
There's the revenue that's included in here. So the
fund balance is not expected to change with.
No, there's a reduction
Okay.
in this estimate of about, I think, $30,000. But I just had the conversation today. We're going to fight and scrap for every little bit of maintaining the fund balance at or above this level. So we're in the fight.
I was curious as to what was going to cover the capital project over expenditure. On second page, budgeted appropriations of 12.7, total between year-to-date spent and encumbrances projections of 15.8, leaving about 3 million over expended.
There was reported by interim director Jacobson that the bond funds had projects that were completed and still had encumbrances, and that they needed to be disencumbered. So I believe what was reported last month was that there was more money available than what had previously been reported. So it's maybe something that Director Rodell could check in with interim director Jacobson.
So potentially the encumbrances are
Encumbrances
too
would-
high,
Mhm.
causing it to look like it's going to be overspent.
Does this also cover potentially, I don't know if this category is it or not, does it also potentially cover the sale of the old Dundee property? Would that fall into this category at all? Because that number is pretty much what our bill is that we
There's
need to cover for.
there's not any consideration of the sale of Dundee in here.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is also, this is the expenditure side as well. The revenue side of the capital projects fund is above this. So, yeah.
I thought I had another question.
Also, I don't believe that the projects would all be done by June 30th, so those encumbrances would carry over into the next year.
Correct. So even with the appropriations out of whack a little bit, is this going to impact our ending fund balance target of the 522,000?
This, the wrong word came to mind, not encumbers. This encompasses those changes.
Yeah.
So this report considers the revenue and the expenditures. And one thing to remember, and I said this in the board meeting, I apologize to repeat, but is that there's two things that we're monitoring. There's our actual cash flows, which is where our actuals are coming in, how much actual cash we have, how much actual expenditures we have, where that's projected. Then we have budget, which is monitoring the plan, and where we intend to spend the money and adjusting things there to stay within plan. So they're two separate things. This kind of throws them all together in these reports. And so the over under budget is the plan, and then the fund balance is the cash. So they're kind of two different measures.
Oh, okay, I get it. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. I mean, I don't want to be the one asking questions. So if anybody else has one, great. Why do we wait till April to do an adjustment for appropriations?
So we are halfway through the year. And so encumbrances don't actually come, they're not actually expended. So we have time to make sure that that's the best number. So we're not out of appropriation until we spend the money. And so we have that amount of time between now and then to make sure that things are where we think they'll be, and make adjustments with the most information available.
And I see you on the button, Jared. Give me one more question and then you can talk or speak, ask a question, whatever. Then why, if in my mind logically is, and if we're also then waiting for May to get our payments in from the school, then why don't we just make one in May instead of April? I mean, why are we doing it before that one? I mean, I don't know. It's just, I don't care. I'm just, historically, it's fine if whatever. It's just, I just.
The April date is my date in my mind when I would
Okay.
want it. Well, we should have the May estimate, I think, by the second meeting in April.
Okay.
I would hope. But just in my mind, April is the right time frame. So, yeah.
So if you remember, we are always working on 3 years at once. So far we've received estimates for 2 of the 3 years, and once they go out, then there's a lot of sharing of data across the state, and then they get sometimes adjusted a second time before May. But for sure, the 3rd year is coming very, very soon. But again, that is only, the 3rd year would be for next year, and that is also a very preliminary estimate because the year hasn't even started.
Right. Okay. Go ahead, Jared.
One of the things I wanted to share, just based on my knowledge, is that Oregon budget law requires changes to be made to appropriation levels before the appropriation level is exceeded. So that can influence the timing of budget adjustments. So if you exceed and then do a budget adjustment, it's a budget violation.
Oh,
So you have to do the adjustment before you exceed the appropriation level.
okay.
So just,
That's definitely why you do it before June.
yes.
So we're not at risk. So thank you for the information, Jared. So with that information, we're not at risk of going over these before April's meeting? Okay.
Yeah, June is the biggest spend that we have
Okay.
because folks get 3 paychecks that work 10 months. But yeah, no, and just to reiterate, that appropriation is spending authority. And so if we go above it, we don't have the authority to spend above that. So that's the language there.
It's quite common for districts to make school districts to make appropriation changes in April and May. Because as they're building the budget for the next year, it's clear what changes need to be made. That way, we only have to take one set of changes to the board rather than doing it multiple times during the year.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're getting our adjustment from the state school fund from last year in May. And that is in the projected numbers here, is that correct? Okay. And then just on the other note, I was going over some of our previous meetings and it's about 24% of the budget is spent in June.
I'd have to look, but
I just want to say that's
Sounds
what Michelle had put in
okay.
that calendar. So that makes sense with what we're all saying, that not letting it get there before we make sure everything's right. This is super helpful. I want to say every time I see appropriations, I forget that it's the spending authority and get confused on why those numbers seem off. So it's always a great refresher, I think, for us
And it's-
less financially.
One of the biggest board responsibilities is the appropriation levels. Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's, again, same as Saul's sentiment, like, this is great, and again, I appreciate you, willing me and us to kind of bring it back a moment and slow it down a little bit, so we can all make sure we're on the same page, we're maybe educated if we're not there already, and just make sure we know what the best of our knowledge of what's going forward with everything. So thank you for those extra explanations. And thank you, Jared, for adding into. So
I personally appreciate it too, because in this learning phase, it tells me where to look, what to listen for, call things into question. I mean, you guys have a lot more experience with this than I do. And I appreciate your genuine interest and work toward it too. So thank you.
So any other comments, questions, anything else regarding the topic of appropriation changes or just appropriations in general?
Just out of curiosity, so obviously with the speed at which the budget had to be approved last year, considering the information that was received, would these appropriations, considering if we were a little bit more stable in terms of year-to-year spend, I would suspect the changes wouldn't necessarily be as variant, I guess, from this perspective. Is that one of the reasons why we have a little bit more variance in some of these appropriations as opposed to maybe in a typical year, I guess, within quote marks?
I wasn't part of all the
certainly.
hacking and whacking, I like to call it. But I think that, I'm just, there's assumptions that would happen that yes, when you go into any system and take things out in haste, that there's going to be unforeseen consequences. And the lack of the detail that was missing in the prior year to identify when things were off don't lend to the best projections moving forward. And I think that we're just seeing that.
I will also state that as a member of the Budget Committee, Executive Director Jackie Olson from OASBO made it clear that she made the reductions across the board and not according to any specific, because we had only a short period of time to.
Well, I
balance
know
the
we were
budget.
kind of behind the 8 ball in terms of getting that approved through
Yeah.
and there was always an expectation that the budget was going to be amended once the actual changes occurred. I just didn't know if the numbers that were on here are what we should expect in future iterations, or if we would expect these to be a little bit more in line in terms of appropriation with
It's
covering
not-
expense.
I can tell you right now, I'm working with Portland Public Schools
Mhm.
and we were we're just now talking about our supplemental budget change that we need to make in April.
Okay.
So, and it's quite common for school districts to make changes every
Yeah.
year. Just it updates to the latest information.
Okay, anything else? I guess this is not, it could have been added as an agenda topic or not. Well, I'm gonna say it anyways. Again, next meeting, there's none scheduled. I think we're for sure it's gonna take a pause at this time for the finance committee. I'm sure we'll come back together, me, Saul, and maybe Claire, whoever is gonna be on the budget committee as the chair. And vice chair will talk and then figure out when this committee should resume. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been here, that's put in time, questions, discussions, guidance, like into this document. And I do appreciate everybody coming together. We said it at the beginning when we had all the applications, and then we had to approve to get more people to be approved to be on this committee. It's a great show of community support, and we do appreciate it 100%. So I just wanted to kind of say thank you at first, and then we will, whoever, me, Saul, or whoever, will probably communicate after the budget season is over, and see where we're at and what we need to do next. And then talk about, like, we'll probably ask, like, do you want to continue? Do you still want to be on this committee or not? Whatever, and kind of have those discussions again, but it'll probably be by email. And then we'll move forward from that. So, again, thank you. And if I don't personally see you before budget season's over, which is pretty much what, May, June, so maybe end of next summer. I hope you guys have a good break from this. And again, thank you and appreciate all the time and commitment you put into it. So,
Jeremy, can I just ask a
yeah,
question?
go ahead.
Did the board actually intend to have this committee serve for more than 1 year? I don't mean the individuals. I mean, is there a need for this committee to continue after this year, given the real work of managing finance first starts with the administration, overseen by the board, and then by law, the budget committee doing the work of actually working with the board and the administration to create that plan, as Nate said. And so just wondered if the board, in starting this, actually ever thought that this might continue more than 1 year, or whether this was just a 1 year kind of deal. And
We did bring it up. We asked the question at our last board meeting, and it was, I would say, resoundingly, please keep this going. I think that there probably will be adjustments based on what our original document was for the reason of starting this. But the idea of making sure that there is a committee with community members that are making sure that nothing's overlooked by the board itself, along with some conversations from, I believe it was Gay Ellen, and I can't remember who else was talking about it, but just that this is normal for most districts that they had been a part of, and a lot of just highly suggesting continuing to keep this and trying to find purposes within any given year to make sure that it's happening.
Yeah, I would agree. Saul did ask those questions, and appreciate you giving the answers. I also see that this committee, with the recent, I guess, expectations from the current president, and then the appointing of the current Department of Ed at the national level, and what's the agenda they're pushing, I feel that we may have a task on our hands over the next year or two, just to help come to have more brains in this and to understand what the impacts are. I know ultimately, as always, the board and like Nate and Dave will have to be the major players and approvers and all this, but there might be some need for us to understand, a much bigger brain trust of understanding what this may all entail and how the impact is. So yeah, so I think next year the focus may look different when we get when we reconvene. But yeah, ultimately, I think they want, and it doesn't have to be every month. I know at some points we're every month and we took a break every month again. It might be like quarterly. And we talk about things that happen, things that might be coming up that we want to, bring to of concern and point out. But yeah, long term, yes, and that's where we may need changes. I don't know. We may need change this recommendation for this committee, kind of like the budget. There's kind of rules around it, like I don't know, they operate every 2 to 3 year time period or something like that, and they.
So this committee was formed based on a board policy about advisory committees. So, and it was created at the pleasure of the board chair. And so then looking at that board policy would be the next step to review. I think there were two different kinds. There was an advisory committee and then a committee, the two different processes in the board policy. So that's what we'd need to follow. Actually, the board would need to follow and then determine next steps.
Yep.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
They ask for you guys to be both on board committees and.
Thank you all. I mean, the brain power in this room is something that we are very lucky to have.
Yes.
And just the most sincere way. Thank you very, very much.
We certainly care about our community and we're happy to serve.
And it shows.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Any other last comments? Anything? Okay, then we'll adjourn this meeting at 7:56. That's a nice quick one, 56 minutes. Thank you, everybody.